The door swings open and the bell rings once, sharp, metallic, unmistakable. Inside, the air is thick with steam and spice. Pickles snap in barrels. Mustard glows yellow under fluorescent lights. A slicer hums behind the counter like machinery in a factory that never quite shut down. Jewish delis didn't just feed America. They built it, block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood, city by city. These weren't quiet places. They were loud with arguments, laughter, and the scrape of plates. Immigrants arrived with little more than memory and hunger, and they turned preservation food into urban power. Salt, smoke, fat, and patience became tools of survival, and then unexpectedly, of success. But here's the twist. Most of these foods weren't meant to be indulgent. They were born from restriction, scarcity, and religious law, not abundance. What feels iconic today once meant making do. So let's step up to the counter. Because these 25 Jewish deli classics didn't just fill stomachs, they filled cities. 1. Pastrami on rye steam curls upward as the knife hits meat, thick slices falling like pages from a book. Pepper bites first. Smoke lingers. Fat melts into rye bread still warm from the toaster. The sound matters too. The scrape of steel, the soft thud of meat landing on paper, the hiss as heat escapes. This is food made loudly, deliberately, refusing subtlety. Pastrami wasn't luxury, it was preservation. Beef was cured, spiced, and smoked so it wouldn't rot before payday, before rent, before winter tightened its grip. Romanian Jews carried the method across the Atlantic. New York amplified it, piling slices higher than necessity ever required. What began as restraint became performance. Here's the tension. Pastrami turned into a symbol of abundance in a world that rarely offered it. The sandwich was oversized on purpose, not for elegance, but for reassurance. It said, "There is enough now, you made it." And just when you swallow that last bite, the pickle barrel cracks open beside you. 2. Half-sour pickles. They're cold, briny, loud when bitten. Garlic punches through first, then dill, then salt. The crunch echoes just enough to turn heads at the counter, a sharp reminder that this food is alive, still working, still changing in the barrel. Juice runs down your fingers, sour and stinging, impossible to ignore. Half-sours live between fresh and fermented, not fully preserved, not fully raw. They exist in a narrow window of time, pulled early from the brine before softness sets in. It's a precarious balance, much like the lives of the people who ate them. Newcomers navigating unfamiliar streets, languages, and rules, never fully settled, never completely unmoored. Here's the twist. Pickles weren't just snacks, they were sanitation. In crowded cities with questionable water, fermented vegetables were safer than drinking from the tap. Survival disguised as pleasure. Your mouth puckers, and suddenly something sweet arrives to soften the blow. 3. Knishes. Golden crust. Soft inside. Potato steam escapes with the first tear. The pastry flakes onto your fingers, leaving behind a faint sheen of oil and salt. It's warm, reassuring, almost weighty in the hand. Food designed to be held, not admired. This is eating without ceremony, meant to happen standing up, leaning against a brick wall or a factory doorway. Knishes were portable meals, carb-heavy, filling, cheap. They fed garment workers and street vendors who couldn't afford time, let alone a table. Sold from pushcarts and corner bakeries, they traveled easily through pockets of steam and sweat, surviving hours without losing their purpose. The surprise? Knishes weren't about flavor fireworks. They were about endurance. Enough calories to last an entire shift, enough warmth to push through fatigue and cold. As crumbs fall to the floor, the smell of boiling broth creeps in from the back. 4. Matzo ball soup. Chicken fat shimmers on the surface. A spoon breaks through and finds the dumpling, soft, floating, forgiving. Steam fogs the air, carrying the scent of onions and slow-simmered bones. The first sip coats the mouth, gentle but deeply savory, the kind of warmth that settles before you realize how cold you were. It moves slowly, asking nothing of you. This was medicine before medicine. A bowl meant to restore strength when doctors were scarce and rest was a luxury. In winters that froze tenement walls and numbed fingers, this soup offered heat, hydration, and the promise that care could still exist in a crowded room. Here's the contradiction. Matzo ball soup became celebratory, served at holidays and family tables, but it was designed for fragility, illness, mourning, recovery. Comfort turned into tradition. And once you're warmed through, the slicer starts up again. 5. Corned beef salt-cured brisket, sliced thick. Pink, dense, unapologetic. Each slice holds its shape, resisting the knife just enough to remind you this meat was built through patience, not tenderness. Salt clings to the surface, locking in moisture and flavor, a method born long before refrigeration made fresh meat reliable. This is beef that learned how to last. Corned beef replaced pork, a workaround shaped by both faith and necessity. Irish Americans ate it too, but Jewish delis refined the ritual, slicing it hot, stacking it high, and serving it with purpose. What began as substitution turned into signature. Here's the catch. It was cheaper than fresh beef, yet it became a marker of status. Preservation masquerading as prosperity, thrift rewritten as triumph. The bread changes now, darker, sweeter. 6. Rye bread sour, dense, resilient. It doesn't crumble, it holds. Your fingers press into the crust and feel resistance, a quiet strength baked into every slice. The tang lingers on the tongue, not flashy, not sweet, but steady. This is bread that expects to be worked, to carry weight without apology. Rye thrived where wheat failed. Immigrants baked with what survived harsh climates and poor soil, not what tasted best or sold easily. In Eastern Europe, rye meant survival through cold seasons and lean years. Flavor was secondary to reliability. The irony? Rye became inseparable from luxury deli meats. Poverty bread turned into the foundation of indulgence, the stage that allowed towering sandwiches to exist at all. What once signaled hardship now signaled excess. And slathered on top, something sharp. 7. Brown mustard. It clears the sinuses before you even taste it. The sharp heat rises instantly, blooming behind the eyes and forcing a breath you didn't plan to take. This isn't a gentle condiment. It announces itself, demanding attention, refusing to be ignored. Mustard cut fat, masked age, and woke the mouth. In a world before reliable refrigeration, sharpness mattered. It corrected meat that had traveled too far or waited too long, turning potential spoilage into something lively. What tasted aggressive was often practical, a small shock that made food feel safer, fresher, alive. Here's the tension. American palates learned to crave intensity through foods meant to hide flaws. Boldness became pleasure. Heat became expectation. What started as insurance against decay rewired taste itself. And once your eyes water, something creamy follows. 8. Chopped liver, silky, rich, almost excessive. The texture surprises first, smooth enough to spread, heavy enough to linger on the tongue. Fat carries the flavor, coating the mouth with something that feels indulgent, even decadent, despite its humble origins. This is not a timid food. It leans into its intensity. Liver was cheap protein, iron-dense, filling, ignored by others who preferred cleaner cuts of meat. Chopping stretched it further, blending it with onions, schmaltz, and patience. Every motion of the knife turned economy into elegance, making scraps feel intentional rather than leftover. The twist? This humble spread became a status appetizer, a delicacy born from thrift, served first to signal hospitality and care. What once fed necessity now marked celebration, but sweetness now enters the frame. 9. Challah braided, glossy, soft enough to tear with fingers. The crust yields easily, giving way to a pale, airy interior that smells faintly of eggs and warmth. Each strand pulls apart cleanly, designed for sharing, for passing from hand to hand rather than slicing into strict portions. This bread invites touch before taste. Challah marked time, Sabbath, holidays, pause. It signaled a slowing of the week, a moment when work stopped and attention turned inward. Even in cities that never slept, this bread insisted on rest, on ritual, on memory carried forward through dough and repetition. Here's the pull. Challah wasn't deli food at first. It crossed boundaries, entering storefronts as traditions softened into commerce, sacred rhythms adapting to public life. What was once private became visible. The next bite crunches instead of tears. 10. Latkes oil crackles. Potato shreds brown unevenly. Edges lace into crisp, jagged halos while the centers stay soft and steaming. The sound is constant, comforting, almost hypnotic. A reminder that heat is doing its work, pushing back against cold one bubble at a time. This is food made to be heard as much as tasted. Latkes celebrated oil, survival fuel in winter. Calories mattered when daylight was short and storage was limited. Frying turned humble potatoes into something sustaining, even defiant. Fried food wasn't indulgence. It was rebellion against cold, hunger, and scarcity. Proof that warmth could be created on demand. The shift? Latkes became nostalgia. What once meant survival now meant memory, cooked not out of necessity but longing. The smell alone could summon kitchens long gone and hands no longer there. And memory always wants something sweet. 11. Babka swirls of chocolate collapse into dough. The loaf pulls apart in soft, sticky layers, dark ribbons melting into pale bread with every tear. Sugar caramelizes at the edges, just shy of bitter, leaving behind a scent that feels festive before the first bite is taken. This is indulgence that announces itself quietly, through aroma and texture rather than size. Babka wasn't everyday food. It was stretched celebration. A way to turn simple dough into something that felt rich by folding sweetness deep inside. Chocolate or cinnamon filled the gaps where abundance didn't exist, making each slice feel intentional, even special. Here's the trick. Dessert arrived not because there was excess, but because there wasn't enough to go around. Sweetness created the illusion of plenty, portion by portion, and sugar leads directly to fish. 12. Smoked white fish, silver skin. Soft flesh, smoke without fire. The meat flakes apart at the lightest touch, releasing a quiet aroma that feels deeper than heat alone. It's gentle, restrained, the kind of smokiness that lingers rather than announces itself. This is preservation refined into elegance. Fish preserved lakeside memories from Europe, rivers, cold water, early mornings. Smoking made migration edible, turning something fragile into something that could survive distance and time. For immigrants far from familiar shores, smoked fish carried continuity, a way to taste home in unfamiliar cities. The contradiction? Whitefish became elite while sardines stayed humble. Perception doing the work, not flavor. One was plated carefully, the other eaten quickly, though both were born of the same necessity. Status reshaped memory, not technique. Beside it sits something pink, silkier, saltier, waiting its turn to speak. 13. Lox, silky, cold, salted. The slices drape effortlessly, translucent at the edges, dissolving on the tongue before warmth can reach them. Salt hits first, then richness, then the faint sweetness of fish that has been transformed rather than cooked. This is restraint made luxurious, flavor achieved through patience instead of heat. Lox was preservation perfected. Salmon cured heavily enough to survive weeks of travel, crossing oceans without spoiling long before iceboxes were common. It was food designed for movement, for people who carried their meals as carefully as their memories. Here's the surprise. Refrigeration didn't slay a lox, it elevated it. What once signaled necessity became refinement. Scarcity flavor turned into brunch royalty, paired with cream cheese and ritualized leisure. And under it all, a circle. 14. Bagels, chewy, shiny, dense. The crust resists at first, then gives way with a pull that makes your jaw work for it. This isn't soft bread meant to disappear. It announces itself through texture, through effort, through the simple act of chewing. Each bite feels deliberate, grounding. Bagels were boiled to last longer, stale slower, tougher by design. Before plastic bags and preservatives, boiling sealed the dough, locking in moisture and creating a skin that could survive long days on pushcarts and bakery shelves. They were practical food for people always moving, always working. The irony? America fell in love with their resistance. What was engineered for durability became a craving. Texture became identity. Chew became character. Now split, toasted, filled with excess, cream cheese, fish, vegetables stacked high. But once, bagels were eaten plain on the street, no adornment needed. And that street had eggs. 15. Egg cream. No eggs, no cream, just fizz. The first sip surprises, cold, airy, lighter than it looks. Bubbles rush upward, carrying sweetness and milk together in a way that feels indulgent without being filling. It's a drink that disappears almost as quickly as it arrives, leaving behind a faint echo of chocolate and seltzer on the tongue. Milk, seltzer, syrup, a soda fountain illusion built from the cheapest components available. It looked rich, tasted playful, and required no special equipment beyond a glass and a steady hand. In busy neighborhoods, it became refreshment without commitment, pleasure without weight. The twist? Egg creams offered luxury without cost. Foam where substance couldn't be afforded, spectacle where resources were thin. A moment of indulgence that didn't slow the day. The glass empties fast, because something heavy is coming. 16. Brisket. Slow. Patient, unrushed. The meat sits in heat for hours, absorbing moisture, softening fiber by fiber, asking for nothing but time. Aromas build gradually, onions melting, spices deepening, filling kitchens long before the meal is ready. This is cooking that refuses haste, that demands attention long after the fire is lit. Tough meat transformed by time. Brisket taught cities how to wait, how to plan meals around hours instead of minutes. In crowded neighborhoods driven by factory whistles and clock punches, this dish moved at its own pace, insisting that not everything could be rushed. Here's the lesson. Flavor came from endurance, not speed, a quiet rebellion against industrial life, against efficiency as the only measure of value. Patience became taste, and endurance pairs with sweetness. 17. Kasha varnishkis. Buckwheat groats, nutty and dry. Bowtie pasta softens the blow. The contrast is immediate, the kasha firm and earthy, the noodles tender and yielding, each balancing the other on the fork. It's a quiet dish, not flashy, not aromatic, asking you to slow down and notice texture instead of spectacle. This was economy cooking, grains stretched, pasta padded, protein optional. Buckwheat was cheap, filling, and dependable, while a handful of noodles made the plate feel generous. It fed families through lean stretches, offering sustenance without pretending to be more than it was. The reveal? American abundance nearly erased it. As meat became cheaper and portions grew larger, dishes built on restraint fell out of favor. Kasha varnishkis survived in delis because memory demanded it, because someone insisted it stay. The next dish smells faintly of vinegar. 18. Stuffed cabbage. Sweet sour sauce coats tight rolls. The cabbage yields easily under the fork, releasing steam scented with vinegar and sugar. Each bite balances tang and sweetness, soft leaves giving way to a modest filling tucked carefully inside. It's comforting without being heavy, deliberate without excess. Cabbage was cheap, filling, forgiving. It grew well in poor soil, stored easily through winter, and stretched around whatever meat was available. Stuffing made small amounts feel generous, turning frugality into abundance on the plate. Every roll was a lesson in restraint disguised as care. The trick? Sweetness balanced hardship. Sugar wasn't indulgence, it was camouflage, masking scarcity with comfort and familiarity. A little sweetness made endurance taste like choice. Now the slicer returns. 19. Tongue. Pink. Tender. Unexpected. The knife slides through with almost no resistance, revealing meat that looks unfamiliar but eats like a secret. There's no gamminess, no toughness, just richness and a softness that catches people off guard. This is a cut that challenges assumptions before it rewards patience. Eating tongue was respect, wasting nothing. It honored the animal and the labor behind it. Skill turned taboo into tenderness through long simmering, careful peeling, and precise slicing. What others rejected became proof of mastery in the kitchen. The tension? As prosperity grew, tongue disappeared. Abundance erased humility. When choice expanded, respect narrowed, and dishes tied to restraint slipped quietly off menus. What once signaled care began to feel unnecessary. Something crackles again. 20. Fried kishka sausage casing snaps. Inside, matzo meal and fat melt together. Kishka stretched scraps. Fried, it felt rich. Here's the irony. What began as filler became flavor, until fillers were no longer needed. And that leads to dessert again. 21. Rugelach. Small, dense, sweet. Rugelach were designed to share. Small pastries for many hands. The twist? Portion control born from scarcity later felt like elegance. Now, something sharp cuts through. 22. Pickled herring fish in jars, onions floating. Herring traveled well. It fed ports and inland cities alike. The contradiction? Strong smells marked immigrant spaces until tastes shifted and pride followed. The next item is pure comfort. 23. Blintz's soft crepes folded around cheese. Blintz's were celebration food, time-consuming, deliberate. Here's the pull. They survived because they demanded effort. Convenience never replaced them fully. The counter quiets. 24. Black and white cookies, half chocolate, half vanilla, no compromise. They weren't perfect, they were symbolic. The twist? Balance became branding. A city baked its identity into dessert. And finally, something simple. 25. Pickle brine shots, cold, salty, electric, nothing wasted. Even the liquid mattered. The truth? Jewish deli culture was about extraction, pulling nourishment from every possible source. And when the glass empties, the story does too. The plate is empty. The counter is worn smooth by elbows that leaned there for generations. These foods weren't trends. They were tools. Survival turned into identity. Preservation turned into pleasure. Jewish delis didn't just reflect American cities. They shaped them, teaching neighborhoods how to eat, wait, argue, and gather. And though many delis are gone, the flavors remain, hiding in menus, memories, and the way we stack meat too high and call it normal. If you want more stories like this, where food explains history better than textbooks ever could, subscribe and step back up to the counter. The bell will ring again.